Shalom. This week's Torah portion is Parashat Ki Teitzei, the sixth Torah portion in the book of Deuteronomy, beginning with verse 10, chapter 21. Parashat Ki Teitzei, always read in the month of Elul, has a unique distinction. It contains more mitzvot, divine commandments, than any other parsha in the entire Torah. All sorts of mitzvot are to be found here. A very wide variety of commandments and prohibitions relating to various areas of life. In all, 74 of the Torah's 613 commandments are included here in the Parsha of Ki Teitzei, 28 positive and 46 negative. These include, to name just a few, the laws of the beautiful captive woman, the inheritance rights of the firstborn, the wayward and rebellious son, burial and dignity of the dead, returning a lost object, sending away the mother bird before taking her young, the duty to erect a safety fence around the roof of one's home, various forms of kilayim, which are the forbidden plant and animal mixtures. Also included are the judicial measures and penalties for adultery, for the rape or seduction of an unmarried girl, and for a husband who falsely accuses his wife of infidelity, and laws of various forbidden marriages. Our portion also includes laws governing the purity of the military camp, the prohibition against turning in an escaped slave, duty to pay a worker on time, proper treatment of a debtor, the prohibition against charging interest on a loan, laws of divorce, and the penalty of 39 lashes for transgression of a Torah prohibition, and the procedures for yibum, which is levirate marriage, of the wife of a deceased childless brother, or chalitza, which is the removing of the shoe in the case that the brother-in-law does not wish to marry her. Quite a collection of mitzvot, some of them readily, easily understood, and some of them more exotic seeming, whose opportunity for fulfillment doesn't come up too often. Are all of these mitzvot completely disparate from each other, or does their particular inclusion and grouping in this week's parsha form an intelligible pattern that we can discern? Numerous commentators and sages offer varying approaches to this question. But before we deal with Parashat Ki Teitzei per se, we are of course aware so far of the general pattern of the whole Sefer Devarim, the book of Deuteronomy. Moshe Rabbeinu initially delivers a review of history and introductory statements about the mitzvot, by whom they were given, where and why, and what are the implications of observing them or not. Then the mitzvot relating to loving Hashem, not following other gods, the commandments continuing throughout Parshat Shoftim that instruct us to establish Israel as a holy nation and its institutions in daily life in the land of Israel. And the mitzvot in the portion of Re'eh focused on the establishment of national institutions. Recall that it was back in Re'eh that we were introduced to the place that he will choose, a reference to the commandment to eventually build the Holy Temple there and the national pilgrimage to that place, and the Shemitah sabbatical cycle economic system. Parshat Shoftim also gave instructions and clarifications for the institutions of national leadership, such as the judges, the Supreme Court, the king, the prophet, cities of refuge, as well as laws of the military and warfare. The focus in this week's portion of Parashat Ki Teitzei contrasts with this previous emphasis on the national structure and shifts, for the most part, to a wide variety of mitzvot that by and large pertain to the individual. The circumstances and situations vary, but practically all of these commandments relate to the behavior of the individual within the larger framework of the society of the nation. This order certainly seems logical, since the whole subject of Moshe's speech, which is the book of Devarim, is the establishment of the nation of Israel as a holy people in the land which they are about to enter and conquer. The first priority was the creation of national institutions. Once this national framework has been established, including a judicial system, educators and national leaders, the nation's spiritual center and other institutions, then the nation's collective life will be solidified and focused, and it will be possible to concentrate on and nurture the fulfillment of the numerous mitzvot that are bein adam lechaveiro, commandments that apply between man and his fellow man, that form an integral part of the daily life of each individual within the nation. So while this explains the progression from Parashat Shoftim to Parashat Ki Teitzei, how do we understand the order in which the mitzvot are presented within our Parsha of Ki Teitzei? One deeper approach to understanding Sefer Devarim, the book of Deuteronomy, is based on the understanding that it follows and parallels the order of the Aseret HaDibrot, the Ten Commandments, and that the distribution of the commandments throughout this book are essentially parallel to them. This is an interesting thought. After all, the Ten Commandments served as the introduction to the other commandments. They are a microcosm, a basic framework which contains the essence of the entire Torah. God gathered the entire nation of Israel at the foot of Mount Sinai and uttered the Ten Commandments publicly for all the world to hear. It was through these Ten Commandments that the covenant between God and the people of Israel was sealed. As the Torah states, Deuteronomy 4:13, He proclaimed to you His covenant which He commanded you to keep, 10 commandments, and He wrote them on tablets of stone. These 10 commandments form the template of the fundamental principle of Israel's covenantal relationship with Hashem. The mitzvot of the main speech of Moshe's main speech of Devarim can be seen as offshoots of these commandments and demonstrate how these basic principles are to be applied to the everyday lives of the nation and the individuals. First, we need to remember the difference between the first 2 commandments and the remaining 8. The first 2 commandments deal primarily with the concept of emunah, fundamental belief in God, and the consequence of worshiping, the prohibition after worshiping other gods. As such, these 2 commandments form the very foundation of our relationship with Hashem. The remaining 8 commandments involve concrete, practical mitzvot through which this fundamental principle is implemented and manifest in daily life. Corresponding to this division, the mitzvot of the main speech of Sefer Devarim can also be divided into 2 distinct categories. A section dealing primarily with the issue of emunah, of faith in Hashem, and thus parallel to the first 2 commandments, and the section which addresses the practical mitzvot corresponding to the remaining 8 commandments. The 10 commandments can be understood to be the basis of a general framework for all the commandments that follow in the main part of Moshe's speech in Sefer Devarim. And thus the mitzvot are present in an order which corresponds to the sequence of the 10 commandments. In this sense, each group of mitzvot in Sefer Devarim could be understood as an expansion upon the underlying principle of each one. Thus, the exhortations regarding loving Hashem and not worshipping false gods found in Parshat Ve'etchanan and Akev are parallel to the first 2 commandments, which are commandments of emunah. The mitzvah in the portion of Re'eh, of establishing the holy temple as a place for Hashem to rest His name, corresponds to the 3rd commandment, not saying God's name in vain. The mitzvah of the 7-year sabbatical cycle and the pilgrimage festivals in chapters 15 and 16 of Parshat Re'eh correspond to the 4th commandment, Shabbat. Time element. The leaders of the nation, the judges, Kohanim and Leviim, the king and the prophet in chapters 17 through 18 of Parshat Shoftim correspond to the 5th commandment, honoring one's parents. The commandments in chapters 19 through 21 are offshoots of the 6th commandment, do not murder. These are the laws of war, murder, capital punishment. And in chapters 21 through 25, which encompasses our Parashat of Ki Teitzei, we find all the miscellaneous mitzvot that apply between man and his fellow, parallel to commandments 6 through 10. These mitzvot expand the principles of the 10 commandments to a higher level. For example, not only is one forbidden to steal, one is also required to return a lost item to its owner. In this manner, the laws of Hashavat Avedah, which means returning a lost object, and the obligation to help even one's neighbor's animal in distress can both be seen as offshoots of the prohibition against stealing. And this transforms the fundamental prohibition against stealing into a divine calling to develop and maintain a heightened sensitivity to another's property. Thus, the commandments elucidated by Moshe in Sefer Devarim, expounded upon to the children of Israel on the eve of their first day of the rest of their lives, the start of their real lives as a holy, separate, sensitive people, the life of the new nation in their divinely appointed and bequeathed land, magnify the basic principles of the Sinai revelation as encapsulated in the 10 Commandments to a practical application every aspect of daily life. All this is really very compelling, but it's very cerebral. At the same time, as you know, in Elul, we need to be in touch with our emotions and with our interests. So I would also like to offer a more visceral approach to this Parsha, and it takes us back to the concept of Elul and the spiritual goals and aspirations for this month. After all, what are the commandments? They're the means through which we gain the good for which God created the universe, and through which we are in turn given the opportunity to elevate the entire universe. They are divine threads of light that surround us with divine light, and in turn, through our actions, channel that light into the world. The significance of the commandments is that they were given by Hashem himself. According to his definition, they're the only means through which we can fulfill his purpose in creation. It's the commandments which make the way of Torah, known as Judaism, more than simply a religious philosophy. It's a way of life that calls for action, not a mere confession of faith. But ultimately, free choice is the foundation of this world, the basis of everything, the backdrop and challenge of our whole lives. Free choice and our opportunity to subjugate our base physical animal nature and transform it into eternal spiritual truth is the most important concept of the whole Torah and the foundation of the creation of man. We have free choice to remember Hashem and to cling to his ways, but it's a struggle to choose. As we learned in Parshat Re'eh, see, I present before you today a blessing and a curse. The blessing, that you hearken to the commandments of Hashem your God that I command you today. And the curse, if you do not hearken to the commandments of Hashem your God. Back in Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 26. And as we will learn in Parashat Nitzavim, see, I have placed before you today the life and the good, and the death and the evil. That which I command you today to love Hashem. That will be in Deuteronomy 30, verse 15. So open up your heart in the deepest way. What are the commandments? The best way we can define the mitzvot is to understand them as divine advice. God doesn't force us to listen to him. He can only advise us and hope for the best. American naval commander Oliver Hazard Perry, after a naval battle, is quoted to have said, "We have met the enemy, and they are ours." But in a famous twist on this phrase, American cartoonist Walt Kelly, creator of the comic strip Pogo, in a reference to the rifts in society caused by the Vietnam War, coined the slogan, "We have met the enemy, and he is us." Wow. This is a perfect motto, based on the opening verse of Parashat Ki Teitzei, and a succinct and pithy expression of the theme of a major aspect of the spiritual work incumbent upon all of us during this month of Elul. The Holy Zohar teaches us that the verse, "When you go out to war against your enemy," with which our Torah portion begins, is also a metaphor and can be understood to be a reference to the relentless war that we must wage against the enemy within. As the verse states, when you go out to war against your enemy, not an enemy, but your enemy, the one you know. During this month of Elul, we take a long, hard look at ourselves. We take spiritual stock and face up to the constant, eternal battle that each of us has with our own persecutor within, the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. During this month of Elul, special time of teshuvah, repentance, and drawing close to Hashem, we need to reflect on the idea that the entire purpose of our lives is to win this battle. Indeed, the words, "when you go out to battle," allude also to our birth, our entry into this world. It's a world of battle, bearing in mind that the only reason we were placed on this earth was to change our nature. Your enemy, your own particular enemy. Everyone has his own spiritual task, the reason that we came into this world. The thing which is most difficult, this is the sign, is the thing which we have to overcome. And you know what the greatest, most formidable aspect of this lifelong battle is? Our greatest challenge and the arch weapon in the arsenal of our own internal enemy, that we forget Hashem. We forget the reality of his presence in our lives. We disconnect. We develop an odd self-defense mechanism, a template of denial, convincing ourselves, which is a sure way to lose the battle, that Hashem is only present when we are ready for him, when we're ready to deal with him, when we're interested in confronting him on our terms, but not in everyday situations, not when it comes to interpersonal relationships or business or sexual desire or honest business practices or how we treat others, just to name a few of the dynamics mentioned in our Parsha. There are so many commandments enumerated in our portion, so amazingly varied, mitzvot relating to every area of life, of human endeavor, precisely because the performance of the commandments is our arch weapon to defeat the enemy and win the battle, which is the avodah, the divine service of Elul. Hardest thing of all, greatest and most constant challenge for a human being is to remember Hashem at all times. That's the whole battle. The mitzvot are conduits of light, divine advice, which connect us to Hashem so that we are together through life in every situation. It's well known that one deep level of interpretation of the Torah's allowance to take the beautiful captive woman for a wife, which we have taught over the years, in the name of the holy Or HaChaim, is not because it is an accommodation for base lust and physical attraction, but because this man, this Jewish soldier, in the merit of his selfless dedication to his brethren in fighting the battle, merits to perceive, on a spiritual level of insight, a spark of holiness within this woman. In every situation, no matter how it appears, Hashem is always showing us something. What is Hashem showing me during this month of Elul? What is He telling us? Is the question that we all need to ask. In every relationship, in every challenging situation, He's beckoning us not to forget Him. This is the real secret of the mitzvot, of this week's Torah portion, commandments which apply to every area of life. They constantly imbue and renew the substance of our lives with God consciousness. Thus, how apropos that the Parashat Ki Teitzei, which begins with a battle that clearly has spiritual overtones, ends with a divine commandment to remember and destroy the memory of Amalek. As our sages teach, Amalek is all about doubt, doubting that Hashem is in our midst, making us doubt ourselves, and making us feel distant from Hashem. The spirit of Amalek is about making a person forget Hashem and giving up hope on a relationship with Him. This, then, is the spiritual warfare of the month of Elul, to countermand the Amalekite plot within and without, and through the toolkit of the divine commandments, to constantly renew ourselves and reconnect with Hashem at every moment of our lives.